Hello friends, this is Brian Amick, and welcome to episode 10 of Project 39. We have a special guest joining us today. He's a Madison native, currently serving as the city's 36th mayor, Bob Courtney. Mayor Courtney generously offered to take time from his busy schedule to sit down with me, so we met at his office down at City Hall. We hope to come up with 40 to 45 minutes of good content for this episode, and we ended up going for almost an hour and 45 minutes. So it turned into quite a long conversation, but a lot of good content here. Due to the length of this, I'm going to have to split it into two episodes. I'll release the second part on Monday, January 31st. As always, I ask you to help me grow the show and spread the word. Share this with your friends and neighbors. We cover a lot of information about Madison and what's going on, and if you know somebody that would be affected by one of these topics, give them a heads up. They might want to hear about it. I'd also be glad to hear what you think on our Facebook page. You can leave a comment there. If you got a comment or a question that you prefer to keep private, you can reach me by email at project39pod@gmail.com. All right, let's get on with the show. Mayor Bob Courtney, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Good afternoon, Brian. I am doing awesome, and again, thank you for inviting me to join you today.
I appreciate you taking your time. I know you're busy, and it means a lot that you would block some time for me to come down here and talk to you.
There's lots going on. I love to share what's going on here in Madison. So again, thanks for the invitation.
Cool. Okay. Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about you. So you're originally from Madison, is that correct?
That's correct. Been here my entire life.
Okay.
Grew up downtown on Walnut Street. My dad was a truck driver. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. I have 5 older sisters, and I'm the youngest of 6 and the only boy.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what's the age gap there? What's the age range on
about 10 years.
10 years?
Between the youngest and the oldest. There was
10 years.
Yeah, there was about like two clubs of kids. There was the older sisters,
mm-hmm.
and then I have 2 sisters who were closer to me in age.
Okay. And then after, so we talked earlier, you graduated from Madison High School.
1981.
And after that, college?
Went to Ball State, graduated there in 1985, and went right into the workforce. Worked for the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions right out of college, which was great because I always wanted a banking career.
So what did you study at Ball State?
I studied finance and accounting.
Okay. All right.
Also ran track and cross country for 2 years at Ball State. Paid my own way through college, so I had to stop after a couple of years of being a walk-on and get a job to support myself through school.
Yeah, that's good though. So tell us about your career then. After college, what did you do?
Yeah,
then?
I started, as I said, as a commercial bank examiner, which was a fantastic experience, and I really just got lucky because I always wanted to live and work in Madison, Indiana. And back in the 80s, particularly in a professional career that was banking, it was hard to get a career started there. And so commercial bank examining was a great opportunity. I really enjoyed it, learned a lot, particularly just the foundational structure and management of banks. I became one of the youngest senior commercial bank examiners for DFI. And I was recruited by Dean Hawkins, who was the president of the State Bank of Salem in Salem, Indiana, to come to work for him. But I was always fortunate because just through happenstance, Russ Doan, who was a commercial bank examiner too, he was from Paoli, Indiana, and his family owned a bank over in Orange County. And as I was coming on board to start doing my training, I was actually going to be assigned to northern Indiana, which is where I was going to have to relocate because you had to live in the district in which you were serving. At that point in time, back in the 80s, they had 4 districts, and a spot in the southern district was not available. But while I was there during my training, and the training was only going to be a couple weeks long at headquarters at the state office building in Indianapolis, Russ left to go work for his family bank. And Randy Rowe, who I'll never forget some of these names, Randy Rowe and John Simmons, who were great mentors of mine when I was just coming out of college and really wanted to get started, and Al Raven, too. He was the elder senior commercial bank examiner. Learned so much from those guys, and Jeff Dugan and all of them. They were part of the team, and now they had an opening, and just through happenstance, I was offered to take on the role of commercial bank examiner for the Southern District, and Madison was included in that Southern District. So that border really was south of Columbus all the way down to Evansville and New Harmony. So it was a big district, but I could live anywhere in the district.
Okay.
And
So you got to come
coincidentally,
home.
now my dream started coming true, which was to at least live in Madison and have a job where I could live here, because I married my high school sweetheart, Tammy Backus. We went to high school together, started dating when we were 15. We also went to college together at Ball State, and she started working immediately at King's Daughters Hospital right out of college in 1986 while I was doing the commercial bank examining thing. And so I have an opportunity to live down here was fantastic, to be closer to family. But I had to drive a lot. I had to start my career, frankly, of commuting, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But it was fantastic to be able to live here in Madison, where I grew up.
Yeah, you are fortunate. A lot of people, don't get to come home. They got to go elsewhere.
Well, and what I learned along the way too, particularly raising my own kids, is when you're young, you may not want to live where you grew up.
Right. Yeah.
But Madison was always home for me, and I always loved Madison. And although over time I could have lived anywhere in the country, because I traveled all over the United States career-wise, never wanted to live anywhere other than Madison, Indiana. And over these last few decades of my professional career, Madison's just gotten better and better.
Okay. So after the bank examining job, where did the career go?
I was recruited by President Hawkins to start with a new job that he was creating over there at State Bank of Salem on the square there, as an operations officer. And State Bank of Salem was a rural bank, and they were looking for ways to just kind of improve operations and really position the bank better in their marketplace. But that also led into a lot of opportunity. It opened the doors for me for a banking career. And the unique thing was I was not only operations officer, but I was assistant controller. So I started learning a lot about the financial aspects of the day-to-day operations of a bank and management of a bank. And that led into more opportunities, because President Hawkins there, for whatever reason, saw some potential in me. And he sponsored me to go to the Stonier Graduate School of Banking at the University of Delaware, which it probably still is, but definitely back then was the premier senior master's level banking program in the country, and that was a 3-year program. But I did that while I was working at the State Bank of Salem. And I've said this a few times before too, Brian, that I've been bought and sold several times, because back then banking laws were just starting to be changed so that there could be cross-county and breaking the borders for banking charters. And I wasn't there but a few years before the State Bank of Salem was acquired by Commerce America Bank, which was acquired by Indiana National Bank. And through a series of just different steps there, I was given more and more opportunity, and eventually it landed down in the Louisville, Kentucky market working for Indiana National Bank. And that's really where I think my career started blossoming, because I was promoted into a commercial real estate lending position. And I'll never forget another great friend and mentor, Jim Wheatley, said, "I don't know what you know, but I'm willing to take a chance on you."
That's good.
And he took a chance on me, and with a good work ethic and just a thirst for learning, I excelled in that role, and that led into other opportunities.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, and then you decided to run for mayor.
Yeah, you skipped a whole thing there. I mean, we went from the 80s all the way to now, but
that was still in the 80s.
That was still in the 80s when we acquired, and so
let's fill in the gap then.
In 1996, another opportunity came about, again through happenstance, and if you don't mind, I'll share the story with you, because you've heard the old adage that life is a journey, not a destination, right? And so it's so true when you kind of trace your steps and your roots back. Even though I'm where exactly I'm probably meant to be, because I believe that we're placed in time and place and circumstances where you're most needed. There's always some type of divine influence that gets you there for whatever reason. In 1996, one of my colleagues was in the office next to me, and I was working for INB in downtown Jeffersonville. in the commercial real estate lending group. And he comes over to me and says, "Hey, I got a call from a recruiter from PNC Bank, but not really interested in that, but maybe you are. Maybe you should give him a call." I said, "I don't know what the job entails, but I'll give him a call." And I called the recruiter and met with them, and it turned out to just be a fantastic opportunity to go to an even bigger financial institution, bigger than INB at the time, and joined their real estate lending group, and that opened up a whole other world for me as well. That really kind of became my passion and my career of working all across the country in affordable housing. And I ended up spending almost 20 years with PNC and in a very niche real estate group that did affordable housing lending and investing all over the country. And I was a senior vice president and managed a national platform for lending and investing, probably involved in over $10 billion worth of transactions.
Oh, wow.
But housing oriented. And so I visited lots of communities, worked with lots of different partnerships and for-profits, nonprofits, housing authorities, state agencies, all across the country from coast to coast.
Did you mostly focus on like single residence homes?
It was all affordable housing, so it was mostly multifamily for seniors and families.
Okay.
But it really opened my eyes up to a few things. Poverty in one, living conditions that people are subjected to all across the country. And frankly, it just increased my appreciation for Madison, because Madison's always been, in my opinion, just a fantastic community. But when we go to some of these other larger urban areas and you see how the density in which people live and the traffic and the housing opportunities, I should say the lack of housing opportunities that they actually have, what became my life's work was something where I could do good as well across the country by investing for my employer. We started a syndication business at PNC Real Estate, so we were doing lending and investing. I was involved in writing the white paper that kind of created a whole national platform for merging syndication and lending for that particular space. And it became a big business for PNC and was great for me as well professionally, and also just for giving back to the communities. And one of my very first affordable housing deals ended up being here in Madison, Indiana. A friend of mine from high school was converting the old junior high school down on Broadway Street into a senior living using low-income housing tax credits and historic tax credits. And so I was involved in raising the capital that he needed in order to finance the construction and restoration of that particular project. But that really became my life's work, which was affordable housing, investing, and lending. And again, it opened me up to a whole world beyond the borders of Southern Indiana. And when you go to places like L.A. or New Jersey or New York or Miami and every place in between. I spent a lot of time in Texas too, and you saw rural and urban and suburban, and I think that created for me not only a love for giving back, but also what can we do better? What are those best practices? Who are doing it really, really well? So I did that for many, many years, and then I retired from that industry in 2018, and probably about 8 or 10 years before that, my wife and I, my wife Tammy, we had started a real estate investment company here in Madison.
Okay, so you were doing both at
we
that
were doing
time?
both. We did it. Started that as a hobby.
Okay.
And we started buying properties in the downtown in the historic district that had been run down. We wanted to improve the neighborhoods and take our life savings and start investing it back in the community. And so we formed a company called Fountain Holdings, and that became our platform for investing all across the community. And in 2018, my intentions were retire, get off the road. Like we were talking about earlier, I'd flown about 1.5 million miles, lived in and out of hotels, spent a tremendous amount of time away from home, and I was ready to be home. And being mayor, coincidentally, is the first job I've ever had in Madison as a professional. So this was my opportunity to live and work in the community that I loved, but also take that experience that I've had all across the country and develop these best practices and also continue to reinvest in our community, and we've invested in over 15 properties in historic downtown Madison.
Well, that's neat. And then becoming mayor, before you were elected, you kind of had to step up, got put in a situation, right?
Yeah. So I had my entry into politics was really late in life.
Mm-hmm.
I was very busy traveling, and I was involved in my kids' lives. Obviously, I have two children, Miles and Lindsay, and politics was something I was always interested in, but never really pursued much. I will tell you a quick story, which
Mm-hmm.
is my early interest in politics came from my wife, Tammy, her grandfather, Walter Backus. And he had a huge influence on me with regards to being aware of our surroundings. And he was a World War II veteran. He was
Mm-hmm.
part of that great generation,
Yep.
and he was a blue-collar worker. And he was, you know, you never guessed where he was standing or what he was thinking, because he was honest and he would just tell you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it also produced an opportunity to have some great exposure to perspectives that are out there about what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gradually got involved here locally in politics and in the background, working on helping recruit other candidates and helping other people with their campaigns. But that also just reminded me, as I went through that process, how important public policy is to our daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it also became a passion of mine to be well informed about how can we improve public policy to improve our lives. And so yes, in 2019, when Mayor Welch indicated he was not going to run for re-election, I was the chair of the Republican Party at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And some people had asked me to consider running for mayor, so I stepped down as the chair and ran for mayor, had a contested primary, and then went on to win the primary and went on to win the general election in November. But something very unfortunate happened
Mm-hmm.
prior to that general election in November 2019, which is Mayor Welch passed away in office unexpectedly. Tragedy for the community. He was at the end of his second term. He was fulfilling his 8th year in office. He had some great initiatives underway that he never got to see to fruition.
Yeah.
And I was caucused in October 2019 as to finish his term,
Mm-hmm.
which went to the end of the year. And I look at it in this type of analogy, which is I was handed off the baton. Mayor Welch and Mayor Armstrong and Mayor Huntington and all the mayors before me, all my predecessors,
Mm-hmm.
they have a unique opportunity, and it's an honor to carry the baton and represent the good citizens of the city of Madison and work with other elected leaders in the county, across the state, and also at the national level.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So tell us about how's the it might not have been so difficult for you, since you, in your private career, it sounds like you worked a lot with, if you're doing affordable housing, you had to be involved with a lot of government agencies. But how was it transitioning to the other side of that transaction, where now you are the one on the government side?
The biggest difference is when you're in the corporate world, everything moves very quickly and change happens very rapidly. And there's also an expectation of performance. Everything was performance-based.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was performance-based. Everything was data-driven. Everything was analytical, particularly in the finance world and the high finance world in which I lived with regards to affordable housing, because it was investments. It wasn't just about building affordable housing, but we had to work with developers. We had to work with nonprofit. We had a lot of stakeholders there. But at the end of the day, it was somebody else's money that we were accountable for, and we ended up, like I said, originating billions and billions of dollars of loans and tax credit equity investments. So the transition was harder than I probably estimated, because government doesn't move near as nimbly and quickly as private enterprise does. And so, but what we've done is, I think, is accelerated that traditional pace of change in our taking this office and myself with my staff, I have, in my opinion, one of the best staffs that has ever occupied City Hall. And I'm not just saying that because I'm mayor. I'm saying that because the quality of people who work for the city of Madison today are exceptional, and I would compare them up to any community. And they work very, very hard, and they work for compensation that generally is below market. But the difference is just the pace of change is a little slower on the government side, and part of that's intentional, right?
Yeah.
Because we are representing another form of government. You got to be a little more methodical. You've got to go through some processes. There's checks and balances, which are,
I was going to say, it's a good thing. You don't want
rightly
to be
there.
knee-jerk reaction
Rightly
to
there.
everything.
But at the same time, what lags generally, as I've talked to other mayors across the state, not just Madison, but other mayors, because we all talk at conferences, and it's a great network of resources, is that cities and governments have not done a very good job of keeping up with systems and investing in technology and using technology to improve how we operate. And we have to squeeze every penny we can out of operations because less and less of our annual budget's coming from property taxes. So we have to find ways to create new revenues in order to take on the key initiatives that we have, in order to grow our community, in order to facilitate all of these things that we love about Madison and make it, high quality of life, high standards. And we're doing that, but that's part of the finesse, I think, which is to try to create that right balance. And we have a great city council. I want to mention we have great other elected leaders throughout our community that we're working with who are partners of ours. Sometimes we have conflict,
conflict,
but that's a natural process.
Conflict's not always bad.
Yeah.
So so in your financial world, right? And you mentioned everything's performance based, and it's easy. I would imagine it's probably easy to measure performance, right? It's dollars a lot of times. In the private sector, it's did we make money? So that doesn't necessarily work in the public sector. How do you measure success now? I mean, what?
Well, in the private world, it is about return on investment and revenues. In the government world, there are parts of our city operations that are very business oriented that have only been operated like a government agency. So, the old adage that good enough for government work sometimes. That culture sits in, and it stops change. But what we've been able to do is start dissecting that, and even in instances where we've just had to take traditional transactional type information and start compiling it into a management information tool. Once we compile that data and we create this information set, now we can start making informed decisions that fit in with our strategic planning. So when I ran for mayor, we had 3 really simple pillars of our campaign that then distilled down into different initiatives. And it was about public safety, economic opportunity, and quality of life. And those are 3 really simple.
Those are 3 good ones.
Those are 3 things. And we even distilled that down into a 3-word mission statement: clean, safe, and beautiful. And so when you start thinking about clean, safe, and beautiful, and everything and public safety and economic opportunity and quality of life, now we can really start taking that and distilling it down into action plans.
Okay.
And we have long vision, things that are in the long view that we know is going to take 5, 6, sometimes it might take us a decade to complete some of the things we're working on. But along the way, there's always the opportunity for quick wins. And that builds momentum.
Right.
That builds excitement about the initiative that you're working on. It builds engagement. And I think that's what we've been good about, which is creating that level of engagement. The pace of change has probably been hard for some people, but my staff here is fantastic, and I couldn't do what I'm doing here every day without them, because they're the ones that are out there making the dream. And when I say my dream is a clean, safe, and beautiful Madison, Indiana, they're all making it happen.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot with that then. Without calling out everybody, because we don't have all day. Who are some of your key team members? Some great ones, honestly, and
I know I'll leave somebody out.
I know.
But
I know.
I do-
It's like your Academy Award acceptance speech. You can't name everybody.
I do want to start by saying that everybody plays an important role.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does. But, Deputy Mayor Minnie McGee.
Okay.
She was my chief of staff coming on board, and one of the things that we did that maybe we can talk about a little bit later is the change. One of the changes we made that we created the deputy mayor position, which is about succession planning.
Okay.
That's also something that in the corporate world, there's always succession planning happening. In government, sometimes we just let the government tell us what our succession planning is going to be, and so there are rules and stuff in place that say, if you don't do this, then you have to do that. So it's kind of a binary decision that you have to make. And we wanted to be more intentional about that. And so we worked with City Council, and I'm grateful for 2nd District Councilman Curtis Chatham, who picked up and really understood the whole intention and meaning and benefit about succession planning. And so we worked very closely together on, within the state confines, the state statute that helped us craft our ordinance. Myself and Councilman Chatham and the rest of the City Council, eventually, we worked really hard on creating that deputy mayor position, and that's about succession planning.
Well, that's great, because you just mentioned some of the things you're working on. You're not going to be here.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm carrying a baton.
Yeah.
I'm working on things that Mayor Welch started that he didn't see into fruition. He worked on things from Mayor Armstrong. Mayor Armstrong worked on things from Mayor Huntington, and it is a cascading effect. That's part of the honor of being.
But you got to have some continuity in there somewhere too.
You definitely have to have the continuity, and there's probably no single person on my staff than Deputy Mayor McGee that works with me most closely on all of these key initiatives, because there's a budgeting element to it, there's a policy element, there's the execution, there's the community engagement, there's all of the contracting that goes into place, but. Chief Wallace also was a very, very important hire. And if I might, I'd love to tell a story about
Sure.
Chief Wallace. So this is his second stint as the City of Madison Chief of Police, but he was also a two-term elected Jefferson County Sheriff.
Right.
And when I came into office, I didn't want to go straight to political appointments like most mayors or they do. We wanted to be really thoughtful, because when I said earlier about what were our key initiatives, what's our pillars, the number one pillar was public safety. And so we knew that we have to absolutely get that right. And public safety is a really comprehensive thing. It's not just about law enforcement. It literally is about the feeling of being safe. The fact that Madison is a small community, but over the course of a weekend or a summer, our population can double and triple in a heartbeat in a weekend.
Right.
We're 12,500, 12,600 people, but not uncommon for us to have, festivals that might have 40 to 50,000 people come in here over the course of a weekend. More than that with some of our festivals. So we had to get public safety right. And we also knew that we had to reverse some negative trends that were occurring with our police department. And the biggest negative trend was just turnover. We had to make sure we had the best paid, most professional, best trained officers that we could put, and I'll match our police officers and our detective resources and the changes that we made with MPD against any police department. And we were really, in my opinion, on the leading edge of a lot of different things, but Chief Wallace was a really critical hire. And the story I like to tell about this is not just Chief Wallace, but also Major McKay, Ben McKay down there. And when we did a national search, we formed a selection committee, and it had very experienced people on it. We had a county prosecutor, a member of our Board of Public Works, State Senator Jack Sandlin, who lives in Indianapolis but has a home in Madison, is a good friend of mine, and he was on that. And he has a law enforcement background, so we had all this expertise, and I knew that I couldn't make this decision myself. I was a kid that grew up on Walnut Street that had a great career in finance and investments, and now I need to lead a city. And so I've never been shy about asking for help. And so I asked them to help us undertake this national selection committee, and we went through dozens and dozens of applications for lots of experienced people who wanted to be Madison's next chief of police. And as we started going through that refinement process, we drilled it down to maybe 5 or 6 top candidates. And 2 of those top candidates were John Wallace and Ben McKay. And so the irony of me telling you the story is that we did a national search, but the best candidates who offered the best experience for what we needed and wanted to accomplish in the city of Madison was John Wallace and Ben McKay.
They were already here.
And that path led us back to Madison. And I was just really proud of the fact that 2 of our top candidates, and this wasn't my opinion saying these were the top 2 candidates. This was the selection committee saying these are the top 2 candidates. And so we ended up with John Wallace and Ben McKay leading our police department. And I couldn't be more prouder of the changes and their leadership in there. Public safety also, it goes beyond law enforcement, but it's also how do you manage an all-volunteer fire department?
Yeah.
And how does Madison carry on that 175-year tradition of fantastic fire service? And Chief Bill DeVries, who was appointed by Mayor Welch, he interviewed him, and he's another fantastic addition. There's few people that when you go to bed at night and you're already worried about what the next day is going to bring for the city because of all the challenges we face, I always rest easy because I know that from a fire protection and law enforcement, City of Madison is in really, really good hands, and then they partner with their colleagues across the county. And some point through this, I'd love to tell you about last night's City Council meeting too, because it was a highlight for me.
Okay, we'll work
moving
that
on.
in.
Moving on. So yeah, we're talking about public safety, and then now we got to talk about streets. Tony Sorrell's. City of Madison has about 60 miles of streets and about 40 miles of sidewalks, and we're a unique town because we've got the river, we've got Main Street, we've got Clifty Drive, we have all these, this historic district and subdivisions. We've just got so much going on for a little town like ours, and so Tony Sorrell's was a tremendous street superintendent for us. And again, another Mayor Welch appointment. And again, our goal was to let's have the best people.
Right.
It wasn't about
changing. Didn't have to be your people. Right.
It wasn't about changing people at all. It was about having the right people who believed in what we wanted to accomplish. And our staff is just tremendous. Tammy Acosta, I can't say enough about her. She was Mayor Welch's executive assistant, and she has been what I would say is that anchor for our office and so many others across the city. But Brian Jackson on the water side, again, clean water, sanitation, water and sewer. We have our own utility company, which is unique for a small town. Yeah. So how do we manage through that? And building and planning with Nicole Shell. And again, we have also a fantastic young group of people.
Okay.
Nicole's very young. Matt Woolard, we brought him in to help lead us through our vision of an improved Parks Department because, again, Parks Department was something that, with the City of Madison having over 24 parks, quality of life is really important. So we need to get that right. And economic development, we just hired Tony Steinhardt, but Matt Worth got us going in the right direction that we needed to get. We brought economic development and integrated under the mayor's office rather than it being a third-party separate entity.
Right.
We felt like it was more aligned to do economic development for. We had these 3 pillars, and economic opportunity was one of the most important ones. So how do we do that? And the way we do that is by taking the apparatus that we have available to the city and integrating it. And then, just everybody who's made the contribution in all the departments to affect this clean, safe, and beautiful strategy. I'm sure I'm missing some people, but I'm going to bring them up as we go along.
Sure.
But I mentioned parks, and Hannah Fagan came in as our community relations director. She had tremendous public policy experience working for Congressman Trey Hollingsworth.
Okay. I
mentioned Mindy and Tony and Chief Wallace and Major McKay, and Tony Sorrells and Brian Jackson. And we also have this historic landmark district, which is famed all across the country, and that's really important to get right. And so just great people.
That's great.
From all departments.
Yeah.
And they've been
it's
fantastic.
And it sounds like several of them have been in their roles for a while too, which is
so they've got the right
helpful.
balance of education and experience, and we're on a mission, and we want people to be embracing what we stand for, and what we stand for is really simple: clean, safe, and beautiful. And
it boils down pretty easily.
I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything I wouldn't do myself.
Yeah.
So it's great to work with. Not too long ago, I was interviewed, and they said, "Well, what's kind of your best accomplishment so far?" And I said, "It's the people. It's the people that work for the city of Madison." And if there's one takeaway, that if anybody ever wants to talk to me, they'll see how proud I am about our team, because they really care, and I see how hard they work to deliver services to the community uninterrupted. Even heading into the third year of a global pandemic, it's just amazing what they're able to do and how talented they are, and all the roles that we play and how much the city of Madison means to its community. And what I mean by that is, we drive the economy here, we drive tourism, we drive what's going to happen with regards to our neighborhoods and our streets and our roads. And we want to make sure that people in Indianapolis and also in Washington, D.C. Know where Madison, Indiana is. And those relationships are all extremely important. And we spend a lot of time cultivating and maintaining those relationships.
Cool. So we're sitting here in your office. It's, what is the date today? 18th, 19th, I think, January 19th. So we're a couple weeks into the new year, 2021. It's in the past. It's wrapped up. Can we talk a little bit about how your year was in 2021?
Sure.
Major accomplishments, how the year went for the city?
I think 2021 was exceptional for a variety of reasons. It's most exceptional because we're always building into the next year, or we're always investing, we're always planning. We did a tremendous amount of planning that produced results in 2021, but more importantly, it's going to produce a lot of results moving forward too. But 2021 is great because we received a $5 million grant to help spur our re-envisioning of Madison's Main Street in 2020, based on an agreement that Mayor Welch had executed. Former State Highway 56, which runs 4.5 miles from downtown to the top of Hanover Hill, was relinquished to the city of Madison, and so it became our burden, but also our opportunity.
Right. So the city has taken over ownership of Main Street. But Main Street is a highway. So.
Yeah, Main Street, which is the former State Highway 56, from the west side of Jefferson Street all the way to the top of Hanover Hill. So there's about 4.5 miles there. Okay. More lane miles, actually, because some of it's 4 lanes that now we have to figure out what do we do with, and how do we maintain it? How do we upgrade it? The road was in terrible condition, hadn't been maintained for probably about 15 years. Lots of heavy truck traffic, industrial traffic between the plants, the power plant and the plants over in Carrollton and Gent. And so from a policy perspective, we actually started, before we did this upgrade that we did toward the tail end of the year. Last year was a major, most complicated probably road project we've ever done in the city, where we invested almost $1 million just in doing some intermediate repairs. But I'd say that's also a great success because we studied that road a lot. We studied the traffic patterns, the industrial traffic. We knew that there was a policy change that had to be made in order to start moving the heavy truck traffic around the city of Madison, and that process started a year earlier because there's a policy that you got to go through with city council. Councilman Chatham actually was my partner in looking at our weight limits and those kinds of things again too, and 4th District Councilman Katie Rampey was very involved in that too. But we started doing the policy thing to reroute heavy truck traffic around the bypass.
So does that include heavy trucks going to the power plant from downtown? They need to go up around?
They need to go around. Okay. And so, what what we wanted to bring to the
That's the
forefront.
worst case scenario right there, right? They're
Yeah,
right at the edge of town, but they got to go all the way around.
But they have to go around. But we wanted to bring to the forefront the fact that over the last 30 years, and probably Mayor Huntington was involved in this. The widening of Clifty Drive was intended to more efficiently and effectively connect people from Highway 421 around the city of Madison and over to 56 and 62. And so you start looking at all the investment that had been made. We really needed to start promoting it because we wanted to make new investment downtown because, again, this is a historic district. We have tourism, we have businesses, restaurants, we have property owners, churches. We have a more dense, different type of population downtown. And so we started working on routing them around so we could, in preparation, make the investment we needed to make in Main Street to make it a safer, more multimodal type of transportation. A lot of pedestrian activity, particularly with tourists and people coming downtown for the weekend and the holidays and so forth. So we had to spend a lot of time gathering data. If there's going to be one takeaway from this administration is we're data-driven. We do a lot of analysis and planning, and we did a tremendous amount of evaluation before we pulled the trigger and decided to calm the traffic down there. And so far it's been, although there are some people who don't like the change, it's been overwhelmingly positive.
Okay.
But part of that was a catalyst for, we got a $5 million grant and we formed a steering committee and we started working on re-envisioning what Madison's Main Street could be other than a state highway that moved cars from point A to point B as fast as they could go.
Right.
And we said it's Madison's Main Street's a lot more than a traffic, a way to move traffic, but it's really
That's a good point.
It's really a place to gather people. It's a place to slow people down. It's a place to enjoy what we have to offer. And so it went into a lot of comprehensive planning for what do we want downtown Madison to look
Well,
like.
how many days a year is Main Street closed for different festivals and stuff anyway? So trucks they were already feeling the impact of that having to go around. So.
Main Street isn't closed that often, but we have a lot of street closures that are right on the sides and the peripheral there that created a lot of different types of pedestrian traffic and more dense. Like I said, our population on a typical weekend can double in size, and we also have the college nearby. So, when they're in school session, we just have a lot of people here, and so we had to just start moving into the direction of change because we got a $5 million grant that's going to come to us in our fiscal year 2025, which isn't that far away, to start working on. That was phase one. The revisioning for Main Street is going to be probably $25 million. So we've already got the first $5 million. We've applied for another phase. We're going to do it in 3 phases. But we had to make some immediate repairs. And when we made these immediate repairs, we knew that let's just attack some of these other lingering issues, which how do we make it safer for everybody?
Yeah.
I think that was a good accomplishment. So on top of that, the police department, great accomplishments there. I was part of the Ready Grant process with the Southern Indiana RDA, and City of Madison's Destination Development Plan was selected for that, and we received a $50 million award for the Regional Development Authority, which we're part of. One of the largest awards in the state. There were only 5 regions in the entire state that were awarded the maximum amount, which was $50 million. We addressed issues in our parks department. We started in 2000. At the beginning of 2021, we started our transition with Sunrise Golf Course to make it a better course to play regionally, make it more profitable. And what I mean by that is reducing the annual deficits there.
Right. Yep.
And that already paid dividends. So we cut the annual deficit at Sunrise Golf Course by 50%. And what that allowed us to do is take that money and reinvest it in our youth programming. So we just announced at the beginning of this year that our programming fees, football and volleyball and basketball, all of our youth sports, which I believe wholeheartedly is great for the quality of life, but also for what it means to our youth to be involved in sports. There's just not much more you can gain relative to character than being involved in some type of extracurricular activity like sport or theater or music. And our investment in Madison's music movement, but more importantly, we were able to take the savings that we had at Sunrise Golf Course and reinvest it in our parks department, make our campground better. We launched a $2.8 million restoration of Crystal Beach, which is iconic.
That one's great.
We dropped our fees.
How many people in this county have learned to swim at Crystal Beach?
I know I did.
I did.
I grew up at that pool. I grew up and then eventually lifeguarded and managed the pool there.
I don't know of any other public pool anywhere like Crystal Beach.
It's one of a kind.
It is. It's so
there have been
unique.
lots of discussions over the years about closing Crystal Beach and building a pool on the hilltop, right?
Yeah.
It would be awful. And when I came in, we made some changes to the strategy at Crystal Beach, and we said, let's do what we need to do in order to keep this iconic, historic asset that was built in the 1930s alive and well and operational for the quality of life of our community for generations to come. And so that's why we did the groundbreaking for $2.8 million, $2.7 million restoration of Crystal Beach. But as I was talking to Brian about our parks department, we were able then to take these savings and reduce the fees that our families have to pay in order for their kids to participate in our youth program by 50%. Yeah. We slashed them. Yeah. And so what we're trying to do is be just more intentional, have better outcomes, run the parts of our business, the parts of the city like a business that we can, like our campground, our pool, our golf course, for example. They need to be more operational like a business. And also the most important thing is, when we do that, it creates a better experience for everybody, but it creates this organic formation of capital to reinvest in those facilities. They're very, very expensive to maintain. Our parks department is suffering from millions of dollars of deferred maintenance that's occurred over a very, very long time. Yeah. Frankly, lots of our community, and we're not unique in that regard. We're always challenged by how do we prioritize and invest our money. And so we've got to find ways to create revenue where we can, and do things that are impactful, that attract other capital, more investment by private enterprise and private individuals. But also grows our population. So we want to do resident attraction and capital attraction at the same time, and that grows our population, and that invests in our businesses and restaurants, and it adds more to the quality of life for Madison. But more importantly, it creates a better environment for those who live and work and play and go to school here and invest here, and that's what we've embarked on, which is, how do we create the information, the data set, and be very, very intentional to have these different outcomes. But those were a few accomplishments, but there are more.
So one major event last year that I recall was the flooding downtown. So what's being done to address that? Well, I know that was a big topic at the time.
It's still a big topic, and I'll say that I'm not sure very many administrations has had so many impacts, external impacts on their administration than ours so soon. We're going into the third year of a global pandemic, which has brought with it shutdowns and high unemployment and dozens of executive orders and CDC guidelines and public health guidelines that we have to follow.
Constantly changing.
And we're, you hear that New York is a city that never sleeps. The city of Madison never sleeps either. It really doesn't. Our services are provided 24 hours. Our services are provided 24 hours a day. When you think about public safety and our utility services, and then during the day when everybody's here on staff. So we can't afford to have any disruptions. So continuity of government operations is something we talk a lot about, and how do we do that? But we had COVID, and we had an award-winning program that we actually launched. We were recognized by a statewide agency called Accelerating Indiana Municipalities, and they gave us a statewide innovation award because we started a jobs program. We did a community outreach. We were out there working with those people who were shut in our community, and went and got groceries and medicines for them. And we never had any disruption of services to anybody in the community during that. But we had some other things too. We had the police pursuit that ended up with the unfortunate death of two teenagers in January of 2020 when I came into office. But what we did in 2020 and at the end of 2020 that rolled into 2021 on that regard was, and I think what we really led the state in this, and maybe even the country, we did a full top to bottom review of our police operating procedures. And that's the thing that I think that Chief Wallace and Major McKay did, is they leaned into that and they knew how important it was. And so we ended up amending a lot of our standard operating procedures to better educate our police force, add additional resources. We're growing our investment in public safety, but also be able to do it in a way that is more safe for the community. So working with our Board of Public Works and Safety and our Police Merit Board, we made some changes there. But you talked about the flood that happened on June 18th of 2021, devastating. Happened in an area where I grew up. I mentioned I grew up on Walnut Street.
Right.
So the North Walnut Street area, and even we had probably 8 or 9 inches of rain over a matter of a few hours, and it just all that storm water that came down from the Rikers Ridge area and the North Madison area, all into this one watershed, Crooked Creek watershed. It overwhelmed that area, and that was the second time in 6 years where there was massive flooding. We did middle of the night search and rescues on watercraft. I mentioned Chief DeVries and his team led that. We rescued 35 people in the middle of the night from dangerous floodwaters where they were trapped in the residences on North Walnut Street. And so we've been committed ever since then to do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't happen again. Or if it does happen again, and we can't control, the rain comes from the heavens. So what we can do is channel how that stormwater is managed. And one of the areas that just nags me and is a nagging, I'm sure it bothered all my predecessor mayors, was how do we effectively manage stormwater? We don't have great stormwater management policies. There's no revenue that's really created in order to address these problems. We have bad drainage across our community. But in that particular night, we had flash flooding as far as 5 miles away. And anyway, we've been committed ever since to do what we can to plan better. And what that is embarked us on a journey of working with the Army Corps of Engineers for a comprehensive study of the Crooked Creek watershed. We're working with the Department of Natural Resources. We're working with Indiana Department of Homeland Security, Indiana Department of Transportation. It goes across all those governments. And that's where these relationships with our state and congressional leaders come into play, because we're going to need to make a multi-million-dollar investment in the not-too-distant future in order to prevent that from happening again. But we've already been working on it from the planning stage. We just are on the tail end of a vegetation remediation program where there had been tremendous overgrowth in that watershed, that in the narrowest part of the channel. We're looking at how drainage comes into that area, but we're prepared that it's going to take a multi-million-dollar investment. So just the whole study process of that watershed. Once we got past the relief effort, we had to do a major relief effort too for the people who had been displaced from their homes, working with the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army, working with disaster relief organizations that helped us rebuild. Very, very grateful for them. City Council approved it at our recommendation, a flood relief program that deferred fees, and we removed 160 tons of debris from the affected area free of charge to our transfer station. Anything we can do to help people get back on their feet. But that is an area where we're committed to finding solutions. We know there are solutions there. We've already got some great ideas that we can implement. We're already implementing things that we know will make a difference. The next time we have a heavy rain, the work's going to continue for another year for us to just figure out what planning needs to be done infrastructure-wise. And then we're going to have to make the right investment. What government is good at is spending money. What they're not so good at is investing money. And I make that distinction because we spend money, we get appropriated money, the state tells us what our budget's going to be, but What's important for us as policymakers is making sure we're spending that money as wisely as possible. And we make the distinction between spending and investing because, when you invest, what you're doing is you're preparing for the future, and you're making a difference. And there are things where we just need to spend money because it's an operational expense and it's a day-to-day thing that we have to incur. But we spend a lot of time talking about the planning that's needed to make the right investments across the community for years to come. And we're looking out year, 2 years, 10 years on the horizon because sometimes it takes that long to develop the strategies and definitely secure the financing that it takes to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. There can't be any good solutions, right? I mean, you either retain the water somewhere or you make it go through faster. I mean, that's... we got to do a combination of all those things. But what we can't do is just hope it never rains that hard again. Yeah. Hope's not a plan. Jack Johnson, I don't know if you remember him, he still is a famous musician, but he has a song, and I refer to that in tongue-in-cheek around here sometimes, which is "Sitting, Waiting, and Wishing." That's great for a song title. It doesn't translate very well as a strategy. Sitting, waiting, and wishing isn't a good strategy. So we got to do all the hard work and have all the hard conversations and invest the money and affect the change that's necessary. Okay, guys, sorry to interrupt, but we're going to take a break right here. I'll release the second part of this conversation with Mayor Bob Courtney on Monday, January 31st. In the meantime, feel free to comment on the Facebook page. I'd like to hear what you think. And once again, if you want to keep it private, you can always reach me by email at project39pod@gmail.com. We'll see you next week. Take care.